Good evening, Gills fans. Welcome back to the latest episode of Gills in the Blood TV. We are back on normal days this week after the Easter weekend. It is Wednesday night, which means it is match preview showtime as we look forward to Gills' final home game of the 24-25 season against, certainly if you're of a certain vintage, our old friends from across the country, Swindon Town. And I'm pleased to say, returning to the channel to look ahead to this fixture is Steven Fyfe. You can find him on X, and I'll put his details in the description at the bottom of this video. And he's part of the brilliant Falls Rush In Swindon Town Football Club podcast. So I'll put the details for both Steven and the pod down there. You can go and give them a follow to get all you need from a Swindon perspective before, during and after the game. Steven, welcome back to the channel first and foremost, and
Thanks
hope
so
you're
much
good.
for having me. It's a pleasure.
No problem at all. It's been a long time. I can't remember doing a preview for the return fixture for some reason or another, and I don't know why.
I think we both spoke about it for our retrospective podcast, and it just didn't work out for one reason or another. So I think it's been a good year or so since I was last on.
It has, yeah, and hopefully it'll be, because we're both going to be in League Two next season. That is completely confirmed now after your defeat. But yeah, let's have a look at recent form, and we'll go through Gills quickly because predominantly it's watched by Gillingham supporters, so they know what's going on. It's 10 points from the last 18 available for Gareth Ainsworth's Gills. That's come in the way of a pair of wins against MK Dons and Wimbledon, and then 4 draws against Colchester, Salford, Chesterfield and Cheltenham. Leaves us in 17th position in the table with 54 points. Swindon, 4 very good results. Wimbledon 2-1, Fleetwood 4-0, Bradford 5-4 in that crazy game a couple of weekends ago, and Grimsby 4-0. Bookended, though, by 2 slightly disappointing 1-0 defeats against Bromley and Morecambe. And that Bromley defeat did put paid to any lingering hopes, Stephen, of a playoff campaign at the end of the season. But just looking at, that's the last 6 we looked at that, and I always think that's a good sort of segment to look at to give an idea. But even if you go back a bit further to last 10, it's 2 sides that are in decent form. We've taken 16 points and you've taken 17 in that period, and now with the added thing that I know the Cheltenham fan called it El Beachico last week for us and Cheltenham. It's another one now, but it could just be 2 sides that just go out and enjoy themselves, and it could have all the makings of being a decent football match.
I hope so. I really hope it is. It's the last thing. It's the last thing we do. There's only a couple of games left. I think we're in the, and I'm sure you're the same, just as every EFL club who isn't necessarily fighting for one thing or the other at this point, but players are fighting for contracts. They're fighting for clubs. There'll be clubs watching who's out of contract, who could be playing for us next year, who could be playing for you next year. But yeah, the one thing I would like to say is whether there's a playoff ambition or not, and as you know, that there's not now. Holloway isn't going to set up to just. He's not going to accept. Okay, there's nothing to play for now. He will. He's very adamant in all of his media stuff that there are certain decisions that have been made and there are certain decisions that have not been made, and those that have not been made will be interesting. I don't know how you feel as well, but I was talking to a couple of fans in the last couple of days since the defeat on Bank Holiday Monday, and we're at that point now where we'd be kind of accepting of maybe 1 or 2 more of the promising youngsters to get some game time. Be nice to see them. We've got a couple. One in particular that's caught the eye, Botan Amin, is getting talked about a lot. He's getting a lot more first team minutes, so I'd like to see him maybe start. And again, I imagine that you and your fan base are the same. It's always nice to have sort of one of your own, or even not necessarily someone who's brought up with the club, but someone who's come through your youth system, maybe get some minutes at the end of the season, just to see what they're about.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because in the recent game against MK Dons a couple of Saturdays ago, we actually ended up with 4 of our own on the pitch at the same time. If you include Bradley Dack, who's obviously returned but came through the youth system before disappearing to Blackburn a few years ago. We then had Tate Holton in goal, was making his debut because our keeper Glenn Morris had picked up a hamstring strain. Joe Bode came on before going back off with a knock, and Sam Gale as well, centre half, who came into the side under John Coleman. So yeah, that's my pinned tweet actually at the moment, and it was great to see, and it's great to see Dacky having an impact again, because we know the season's not worked out as well as we'd want for him and for us collectively. Yeah, he's one of them. To talk about one that we've also got that used to be yours, someone like Johnny Williams, when they're fit, they're probably too good for the level, but at the same time, there's a reason why they're at the level. But yeah, Harry McCurdy, you had previously, very good player, a bit of a maverick, an enigma, but just so naturally talented that they just see things on the football pitch that other players potentially don't. So yeah, could be that both teams have sort of younger players in the starting 11. Joe scored a good goal on Easter Monday to win us that football match. But just as a whole, because obviously we know that at the start of the season it was Mark Kennedy and Ian Holloway came into a very different Swindon town that we're seeing at the weekend. I think you had, well, it was 25th of October Ian was appointed, and you've taken 49 points from 31 matches available since then, which is 1.58 per game. It's essentially playoff form, isn't it?
Well, I believe, I can't remember what the date of the graphic that was, but up until Bromley on Bank Holiday Monday, I believe the figure was either in 2025 or in the last, or since Holloway took over, maybe, or whatever the graphic was, and I can find it and send it to you if you like. We would be top of the league from that point. It's
been a brilliant turnaround, and I know there were question marks over Holloway coming back, and he'd been out of the game for a while.
Listen, I can honestly say I was one of them when it got announced, and it all came about very quickly. I mean, our podcast, we're a group of 14, and it was very split. There were some that were very happy, and I'm happy to say that I've been proven wrong. So I was in the camp saying I'm not sold on this at all, and some mutual friends of ours, I'm sure, we were having conversations on the day, and I said I think that's the final nail for us. I think we're down.
Okay, fair enough. You kind of answered my question. I was going to say, because what was the reaction at the time, and what's the the fan base like now? Because I think he's just signed a contract extension, hasn't he? Such as the job that he's done.
3 years, which again, even with the job he's done, surprised me that he got 3 years. But there's a reason behind that. And again, I'm very, very happy to have been proven wrong. He's clearly got the results, as you mentioned earlier. Fans are excited. That there are still issues away from what's happening on the pitch, which is causing discontent amongst the fan base and causing our attendances maybe not to be where they should be given what's being served up. But we can't argue that he has, because he hasn't made wholesale, like it's not like in January he got rid of all of Kennedy's squad and brought in his own players.
No.
He is essentially, with the exception of one or two, playing with the same deck. But his style of management seems to have shone through. A lot of players have raised their game. And yeah, it is a shame that it happened the way it did, but it gives a sense of optimism for next year.
Which leads me nicely into the next question. What are the aims? And I know we're a long way away. We've got a summer of transfers and we've got all this and that. But obviously, the expectation must be slightly higher now, given that you've sort of had 2/3 of a really good season. So the aim's got to be what, top 10 at minimum next season, or is it playoffs minimum?
Well, I certainly don't want to come across as arrogant or have delusions of grandeur, but I'm sure Swindon are very similar to yourselves. We have lofty ambitions. We did this year, we did last year, and we will do next year. I think if you ask the majority of Swindon fans, it will be get out of this division via promotion. That we will be targeting top 3 before a ball's been kicked. And I am as a person, I am a football romanticist, no matter what level I look at. And obviously I have this preconception with Swindon because I have that emotional attachment. But regardless, again, also, I personally live in Leicester, so I've seen the dreams and the fantasies in recent years of everything they've done. But at the start of the season, everyone, authorities permitting, start on the same points. So there's no reason you shouldn't, until something's mathematically impossible, that's what you should aim for. So I will always say automatic promotion, start by targeting winning the league and then address it from there. I think if you ask the majority of Swindon fans, the only thing that will stop them saying it is our ownership dispute. But realistically, they will say, as a Swindon fan, we want promotion. We want to win the league, but if we can't win the league, we want promotion. And if we can't win promotion, playoffs should be the absolute minimum we're looking for.
Fair enough. And there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, I think from our point of view as a fan base, we've been massively over-promised and under-delivered since the Gallinsons took over. So I, for one, was very pleased when Gareth was announced that they came out and said, now there's a 2-year plan.
When I saw it, I was like, that is a major appointment.
Yeah.
I treated that in a very similar way to the recent MK Dons one, where I said, you should be watching what happens there now.
Yeah, that's a massive one, because I didn't think that they'd get Paul Warne to drop down into League Two, given that he was in the Championship essentially not that long ago. So that's a really good appointment. And yeah, you'd probably say there'd be another one that's got ambitions, because they're well backed as well of being good next season. But yeah, it has all the makings of, I think we said this season that there was probably 2/3 of the division thought they could get in the top 7, which means there's going to be a lot of disappointed fan bases and that type of thing. So
it's a funny one because it's a conversation we have regularly where League Two as a whole, if you and we're both part of this. League Two as a whole, I don't think the standard has been as good as in previous years.
No, I'd agree.
But as a division, I think it's my favourite to watch. Everyone says Premier League is best if you want the quality. Championship is the best if you want for drama. I think League Two is the best. You just look at how we are with 2 games to go, and we were talking off camera about the automatic promotion race and how nobody wants it. The Walsall fall off. You look at how long. Will it be those 2 that go down, or could the likes of Tranmere still be sucked into it, and could Accrington still be sucked into it? And I've loved League Two just for entertainment this year. It's been chaos.
Oh, absolutely. Not just entertainment as well, but the fact that I think you get more connectivity between club, players and fan base at this level as well. Like the stuff we do, you get to interview players and that type of thing. You get no dream of doing that at a Premier League club because there'd just be too much demand, essentially. And in fairness, the players wouldn't have enough time to be able to answer every request and that type of thing. But no, I totally get it. It's League One, League Two is probably where traditionally and historically Gills and Swindon have been and spent most of their lives. So that's the levels that we look at. And I totally agree. It's brilliant. It's always nicer when you're a bit better and winning football matches, of course.
Absolutely.
And I think we both suffered from that enough in recent years.
Well, I mean, we were at one point early in Holloway's tenure, we were rock bottom of the Football League, and we were like this. Obviously, we will say that as supporters, but we don't want Swindon being a non-league football club.
No, we said about the same when the Gallantons first took over, and we were on their first transfer window. We had to pay over the odds to get people in and come and help us get out of that hole because we were 6 points from safety. And the danger was, and I'm still convinced if they'd not taken over the football club, we'd be a National League team. And we know how hard that division is to get out of. Horrible division to get out of. Not just that there's only one that goes up automatically, but the playoffs are somehow even more of a lottery than what we get in the EFL. So horrible league, but again, exciting for different reasons. But probably
great
more
if you're a neutral.
From the outside, I was going to say it's almost like watching a penalty shootout. It's nice if it's not your club involved.
Yeah. The thing is, there's not many neutrals in League Two and the National League, is there?
No, that's the trouble. You're always
associated.
You've always got someone, or someone that you want them to do well for them. Talking of doing well, it's fair to say that Swindon have probably been one of the most entertaining teams this season on paper in terms of goals per game. I think I've worked it out. It's been 70 scored and 62 conceded. I think it's dead on 3 a game, if my maths is correct. 132 divided by 44. I'm no, countdown, Carol Vorderman or whatever the new girl is that does it now, but I'm showing my age there.
Rachel will be very impressed.
But 130. I'm sure it is. Anyway, it's about 3 a game. So, number one, that's great to see. And again, it comes back to your point and my point about neutrals. Must be fun to go and watch. But what's got to change next season, Stephen, to become a good side that's going to finish 12th, 13th, 14th, to become that side that you want it to be, that gets in the top 7, the top 3, and become champions?
Do you know what? And this will probably sound strange given the build up to the question, but not a great deal. Okay. And by that, I mean, at the start of the season, under the Kennedy era, if you go back and look at the results, there's quite a few in there where there might be sort of 3s and 4s to not a lot. What Holloway has done is he's given the attacking players confidence. And admittedly, our situation's probably assisted with this, but there's been a few games even recently where at one point, I think against Bradford, at one point in the second half, we were playing a 2-1-7 formation. Because we just had all of our attacking players on the pitch to try and get back in the game. Now, obviously, you can't do that across the season. So that's why I'm interested to see what happens at the start of the campaign. But we are slightly better defensively. And one of the big things from last season into this year was we had to be better defensively. We were an absolute shambles defensively. Now, we added the likes of Grant Hall, Delaney, Will Wright. These players come in with big reputations, particularly at this level. Now, controversially to any Swindon fans that watch our show and will watch this when I share it for you, I've personally said I'm not a massive Will Wright fan. I think he's a very good footballer. He's not a very good defender. However, on saying that, depending on who's next to him, it improves his game. So when Delaney plays, he is better because Delaney is what I would class more of a proper defender. We don't have a lot of proper defenders within the team. So with what Holloway's done and finding what works, if we can keep the nucleus of the squad together, which is generally Swindon's biggest problem, we have a very, very high turnover. I know in the lower leagues, it's generally considered a higher turnover anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we're talking, we're doing 14, 15, 16, 17 players every summer. And it's a lot. I think if Holloway can keep the nucleus together, and we can just maybe get that, even just that one more proper defender in there. If we can re-sign Ripley, because we signed him in January on a short-term contract from Port Vale. The difference he's made has been noticeable, having that experienced goalkeeper.
Okay.
If we can have that other proper defender in the mix, I think we do look better defensively, with the exception of the chaos game that you mentioned earlier against Bradford a couple of weeks ago, which I can't remember feeling anger and joy in equal measure so much at a game. We don't really concede what I call the stupid goals anymore. Like last season, we did it every week. Look, you would never look and say that's a really good goal or fair play to them. This year, particularly since January, if a team scored, they've generally earned it. It's not been, oh my God, that's terrible defending. Okay. So the plan is there. There's starting to be a bit of an identity in terms of what our style of play is, which we've missed for a while. Probably going back to the playoff season a couple of years ago. So yeah, I know that's a long roundabout way of answering your question.
No, it's fine. That's what we want to find out.
Not a great deal has to change. Just little tweaks, really, for me, because we are slightly better defensively, and as you said with the numbers there, and in recent games, we can score goals. We have got capable players of scoring goals.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of them who's come in January from Mansfield is another former Gills player, and that's Tom Nichols. And I had a question about him and Will Wright. You've answered that already about Will Wright, but tell me about the impact that Tom's had, because I personally think, and I don't know what you think, but I think we'd have been better off at the back end of last season keeping Tom Nichols, because we replaced him and Macaulay Bond, and all right, their numbers weren't great, but they were experienced people that know their way around EFL. Stephen Clements, who was the manager at the time, which is ridiculous that that's 4 managers ago now, which ultimately tells you why we are where we are.
That's Swindon level turnover of manager.
It's just crazy. Yeah, when you start being called Watford of League Two, you know that it's not a good thing. I personally think we'd have been better off and had a better chance of getting in the playoffs last season if we'd kept Tom. And he went and had, a modicum of a positive impact at Mansfield, but it's difficult going into a side that's top of the league or challenging and playing well. It didn't quite work out in League One for Tom. I think we know that. I think it's fair to say that he's a good League Two player, but maybe League One is just a step too far. But he must have made a positive impact. There's been goal contribution since his arrival in January.
Do you know what? He surprised me. Not like you say, he come in with a certain reputation because of what he's done in recent years, as you mentioned there. But he surprised me, particularly recently, in what he is as a player isn't quite what I envisaged him being, and that's probably just because of how Holloway sets up. But when he came in, I thought he was going to be that sort of that number 10, if you like, who was going to be the one that finally knits our attack together and sorts it out. But what I've found and what I've really appreciated, particularly in recent weeks, and we've been discussing it as well, is he's very disciplined and very controlled in his approach. And I mentioned I mentioned we went to that 2-1-7 against Bradford. He was the one. Okay. He was just playing centre midfield on his own. And despite the fact that you've got this sort of preconceived idea that he's attack minded as well, so you could say 2-0-8 if you like, he was the one that took responsibility for this, and he was dropping back, taking the balls off the centre backs, and forcing the attacks. He took responsibility for it, and I like that about him. So although he has all the experience and the attributes to be that number 10, and he is slightly different to our other attacking players in his approach to attacking, if you like, it has surprised me, and I've really appreciated the disciplined and controlled nature of his performances. And it really, really wouldn't surprise me if he was a number 1 target for Holloway in the summer.
Yeah, because I don't think he's going to have a future at Mansfield. I know they've struggled in the second half of the season, but they're going to stay in League One. And so, yeah, it might be one that they look to move on. And obviously he's going to be someone that surely would be on your radar because he's had a positive impact. Like you say, he's that different type of centre forward. And 2 forwards that have done really well for yourselves are Kabongo Chimanga, I think it is, if I've pronounced that
That's
right.
very nicely pronounced. Well done.
And Harry Smith, who's very local to ourselves. So that, and this is just me saying, might be one to keep an eye on in terms of our interest in this. That's just me.
Yeah.
Sort of just putting a name out there and thinking out loud, because he was born in Chatham, so he's literally born 5 minutes up the road.
I believe, and I don't know this for a fact, I could be wrong, and I'm sure you will have people reply to you if I am wrong. I believe he is contracted already, and I believe he has said he's happy to stay.
No, I get that. He's playing games and he's doing well, isn't he? Yeah, of course,
That means absolutely nothing. And,
no,
and if
absolutely.
you want to start throwing money at Swindon, it will happen because we don't have much. But yeah, I believe he is one of those who's already come out and say he wants to be part of what happens going forward.
Like I say, there's not a rumour or anything. I've not heard anything. It's just me, because of the fact that geographically it could make sense.
We're at that point we should all start throwing out rumours.
Oh, absolutely, because there's nothing to do soon.
Exactly.
So we need something to talk about and make up or whatever we're going to do. But yeah, in terms of Chimanga and Smith, 32 contributions between them this season. They've been very, very good. I think it's, and if you look at them in the last 8 games, they've got 10 goal contributions between the two of them. But they're the obvious ones, and it is always goal scorers and the exciting attacking players that get.
So here's the thing with that, and it's interesting, and I love how prepared you are with the numbers. It's great because because I'm going to sort of contradict all of them, despite the fact that you've got the facts. So until recently, and I say this with a little bit of humour behind it, Chimanga was very much considered a pen merchant. If you look at his goals, they are predominantly penalties. His first touches are great, but in recent weeks that has improved, and we've seen the poacher. He's not going to pick up the ball, run past 3 players and score a lovely goal. What he will do is, if a ball comes in and your defender switches off for half a second, he will appear. And up until the penalty on Bank Holiday Monday, which I think is the first one he's missed for us, anything from 12 yards or closer, he is putting away. He is ice cold veins. If you get him 12 yards or further out, honestly, you wouldn't realise he was a footballer at times. And I do say that with a bit of humour behind it. But he's got all the attributes to be fantastic, none of the composure, if that makes sense, until he's 12 yards or closer, and then he's got ice in his veins.
But then if you could get them two and then Nichols, you've got the makings of 3 very good and very different attackers for next season, haven't you? You've got Smith, who we know what he's about. He does exactly what he says on the tin. He's an arsehole to play against. He's nasty. He don't mind swinging his arms about to get where he needs to be, and he's good in the air. And then you'd have Tom, who's the sort of probably the more subtle of the 3, and then Chimanga, like you say. There's nothing wrong with a fox in the box. And
exactly. And that's what I think a lot of teams miss in this division. And Smith, me and Smith have a love-hate relationship. He doesn't know this personally, but me and Smith have a love-hate relationship. I love what he can do. I hate how he does it. I'm very much in the Swindon minority, where his antics wind me up. Like he should have had probably more red cards than he's had this season for some of the stuff. But equally, and a lot of Swindon fans will say, and they are right, he does, because of, if you think like the sort of Peter Crouch mould of striker as well, that sort of tall target man, he gets manhandled and wrestled, and some of the stuff that happens is outrageous. It doesn't excuse his antics, but some of the stuff that happens to him is outrageous. But he recently hasn't been our prime source of goals either. He's very much a streaky striker. And it was funny because at the game a couple of weeks ago, I was saying how we were talking about, when he's not scoring, is his contribution still as big? And does it like the Swindon fans, can they excuse some of it? And when you actually see it in person, you're like, well, yeah, because he's taken, again, another player who takes responsibility. He knows if he's not scoring, the role he's playing, and this is a lot of clubs will do this. Aaron Drynan was a main focal point for our attack for quite a while, but he got injured for the rest of the season, so we had to kind of tweak how we were doing it. So Smith took a different responsibility and became more of the player to knit things together and had the faster attackers running beyond him, kind of thing. But yeah, his goals obviously this season have been absolutely critical to us, and we would be in a very, very different position without him. But again, I mentioned Drynen's injury. Glatzel's come in, and in January, almost every Swindon fan would have told you he was off. There was rumours he was going to Tranmere because he's a Liverpool lad. He's come from their academy. Okay. Everyone would have told you he was off. Poor bloke cannot buy a goal. He really cannot buy a goal. But again, he's another player who what he is offering in this altered approach that we're doing since Drynen's injury, because they are very different players. But what he's been offering, particularly again in recent weeks, has been outstanding. And although, again, you've quite rightly identified Shamanga and Smith will be the ones that your defence should keep an eye on because they are the goal scorers. Mm-hmm. Glatzel will have a major factor in this game.
But I think he was, if I remember rightly, he was good in the 2-2 game last season, Glatzel. I'm sure he started in that game.
He had a spell when we got him. He when we brought him in, he was very good. And then he seemed to be the player most affected by the Kennedy effect. He became a shell of a man he was. And Holloway is slowly, it's taken a long time, but he's slowly getting it back with him. And to the case in point is, again, he was a topic of conversation on our podcast recently. And I refer you to my earlier comment. In January, almost every Swindon fan said he was off. I think it would be probably 70-30 that Swindon fans would be happy to keep him at this point.
Which is similar to ours. Since Gareth's come in, there's a lot of players that you just said no chance of starting, but now they're just at the very worst. They're giving him food for thought to say that maybe they can play a part beyond the end of this season. But obviously that's a chat for the end of the season. Final question, Stephen, before we start calling full time on this episode is obviously the dreaded score prediction. I did a little bit of research again in terms of since
our
the
head-to-head
start,
history.
Since the 2014-15 season, we played 13 times. It's 5 wins for Gills, 7 draws, and just the 1 defeat. 22 goals for us and 14 for yourselves. But if you're looking at Priestfield, it says draw. It's got draw written all over it. Last 6 at Priestfield, 1 win for the Gills and 5 draws, 6-4 and 4 against. So I'd say we're coming out on top generally, but at the Priestfield, it looks like there's been a lot of stalemates, like I've just alluded to. Last season's finished 2-2 because Harry McCurdy decided to ruin our night in about the 94th minute, bless him. Who's going to be happier if any of us come 5 o'clock Saturday afternoon? I've written mine down, so you can go first.
Yeah, that's fine. This is a tough one. Given your form, you're clearly very difficult to beat at the moment, and that's the concern for me. I think if your viewers are wanting to make money on it, it's definitely better going on both teams to score than what the outcome is.
Then I've got that bit right. Come on then, keep going.
Can I make 2?
You can do a head and heart because that's probably where I am as well.
Head is saying 1-1.
Yeah. And I bet your heart's saying 2-1 Swindon.
No. Heart saying 4-2 Swindon.
Mine's saying 2-1 Gills. Not quite as extravagant, but that's because I've watched us average less than a goal a game for about 5 million years.
But you've got the entertainers coming to town. So,
we have,
that'll up your entertainment
could be
value
anything,
as well.
couldn't it? Yeah, if we can't score a couple against you, then we never will. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know about that. I'm not going that far. But yeah, I think, like you say, if you was most neutrals would probably say draw based on the fact that, you know, we're closer in the table than we were a few weeks ago. And the sort of head-to-head overall and at our place says draws the most likely outcome. Stephen, it's been a real pleasure, mate. Really appreciate your time and your knowledge. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the invite. See you again next year.
You shall. Gills fans and Swindon fans, if you are watching at this point, as I always say, thank you very much. It does not ever go unnoticed, all the support. So if you can consider hitting that like button, it'd be greatly appreciated. And also, it'd be even more appreciated if you could press subscribe as we try to get to 3,700 subs before the end of the season. It's going to be a bit of a mad rush, but we are trying to be ambitious. Until then, though, as always, like I say, thank you very much. Be back at the Priestfield myself, Ava, Boz and Stocky, I think, plus everyone else for Matchday Live on Saturday afternoon for the final home game. But until then, enjoy the rest of your week. And most importantly, up the Gills.